Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me play around a little bit.
What's going on?
Throw some sweet
Anything now?
Nope, way better.
Okay.
All right. Oh, here it is.
60 seconds.
Excellent. All right, we're about to go live, so I'm just going
10
to switch.
seconds.
10 seconds. There we go. Coming up. There he is. What's happening? Okay, show's about to start. Let's give him a show.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Well, welcome to Saturday, Johnny Million. Oh my gosh, my microphone seems very hot. I seem very hot, but
It's so hot.
I feel good.
Hot mic.
And that's probably why. Hot, very hot mic. Lots of big doings this week, clearly. I feel like I should just, it's one of those things where you could get into the deep reads of a conversation about all the heavy things that are going on in the world, or you could just go, well, it's not much anybody can do about it. See you later. Especially when, especially when it comes to the sheer amount of awful that we have dealt with as a nation in the last, I would say, 10 days, especially around shootings and the nation's response to gun and riffle laws. Now, I'm just going to say right out of the gate that it is my belief that nothing of substance with any lasting effect will happen until we have 60 plus Democrats in the Senate and we widen our margin in the House and people stop nitpicking the president and giving the Republicans a wedge in going, see, he's not that popular. Until there is no way with the current makeup of the Congress, certainly way the SCOTUS is, and the lack of control that Democrats have over over legal cases that will come to bear on any of these constitutional issues, that there will be any impact of measure. I'm sorry to tell you that, but we got work to do. We as Democrats have work to do, and it's amazing to me as somebody who spent a good deal of time traveling to China, especially leading up to the beginning of the current unpleasantness. Many people I know I was in China basically right up till I could have been accused of being patient zero, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I came back and on this very show warned everybody about the potential for a nasty infection that was going around China and that it was only a matter of time before it struck here. And that if you were sick, stay home, cough into your elbow, think about wearing a mask if you feel like you're coming down with any kind of upper respiratory issue, because this nastiness is on its way and it's doing some major damage and they're really freaking out over there. Now, along with that, I, like many people, for a short while anyways, bought into the China's going to eat our lunch storyline that was floating around for a good deal of time. And one of the big reasons for that storyline, if you'll recall, was the idea that China has a 2050 plan. If you guys if anybody remembers, the story has been, especially about China, is, oh my gosh, A, they're building a lot of infrastructure, and B, look how far into the future they are looking. And isn't that admirable? Especially, I would say, from a fear base on the right wing side of things, and I suppose wanting to give credit to Marxism kind of way on the left. That both groups were kind of enamored of this idea of the long range plans that China has for its future, for its, its carbon footprint, all the stories that you heard. None of which, I'm sad to tell you, are true or are coming to fruition. It was always horse hockey. That said, the people are right to think in terms of long game when it comes to measurable, meaningful change that's required for the safety and the expression. I forgot, Johnny Million. I have to do one little minor change on your name on there.
Oh yeah,
Johnny Million. He actually got his Johnny Million name at Johnny Million on Twitter now instead of the Johnny Million 1. You got to drop the 1. I'm very excited.
No idea what happened. There was a guy sitting on it. He followed one person, had one tweet, and he had it for years. And I tweeted at him and said,
Right.
"Hey, what do I got to do?" And then when I went to check on that tweet, and I clicked on it, and there was no profile there. So I was like,
ooh. Ta-da! So follow at Johnny Million now. Everyone will bump over. I'm very excited. It's a big deal. So, like I was saying, it is. I, by the way, I'm at Hal Sparks on Twitter. I also have halsparks.com. I have had halsparks.com since 1992.
Nice.
Let me tell you, folks. When I first bought my URL with my name on it, this is 8 years before TalkSoup, and I guess 4 years after the great ego explosion of 1988, which I think I earned. But the idea was, and I remember very distinctly in 93 and 92 especially, running around and telling people, hey, you're going to want to get your website at the beginning of the interwebs, when the internet was starting to take off. And everyone looked at me like my head was a Minecraft block, and I was talking to them using tentacle language. And I kept telling everybody, no, this is something especially if you have a business or you're a celebrity, or if you intend on being a business or a celebrity, this is the thing you're going to want to do. And I got Hal Sparks on MySpace. I missed it on Facebook by that much at one point, because when I was getting my name, so my name had to be the Hal Sparks page or something like that. And ever since then, no matter what the site is, I jump on my name and squat on it as quickly as possible because of just that very reason. And I think that
even on all the crazy conservative platforms out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Hal Sparks on Parler and Getter and Trunker and Truther and Maggot and Doc.
Getter
and
sounds horrible.
Yeah, doesn't Getter sounds like a right-wing caveman dating site, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like
Someone's gonna be dragged by their hair.
Exactly. Yeah, hit him over the head with a club and get him inside the cave. Right. So get her inside the cave. So
somebody asked if that was your OnlyFans too.
Yeah. Well, no. I use a nom de plume on my OnlyFans.
Which is oddly nom de plume.
It is. It's weird. Yes, my character. I have a gnome that I play on there. I dress up and
nom de plume with a G.
I'm covered. I cover my junk with flowers. Nom de plume, and
you're just like, you're surrounded by giant things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm naked with a gnome hat and a beard on, and I only have flower. I have floral displays covering my junk. It works. It's hey, to each their own. We're not here to yuck anybody's yum. The point I'm trying to make is that
Oh, and right on schedule. Naked HD is in the chat.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Well, we'll fix that in a moment. Of course, the issue, with a lot of this stuff is trying to convince people when you're on the front edge of something that exciting. When you're trying to tell everybody, hey, this is going to be a big thing. Might want to get in on the ground floor. And there are obvious mistakes in certain areas. Like Bitcoin, I would give as an example. Or gold, which I think had a great day about up till about 800 years ago. And then it's been on a hard fade ever since. You used to kill people over it, and now it's like, oh, I got some in my portfolio. I would call that a fade in importance. It's not Pretty Rock Day. So anyways, I am telling everyone, as a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat who is committed to the kind of common sense gun reform and social structure support and all the things that we love and hold dear, and the improvement and expansion of the ACA to include a public option, all those things, that the only way to get them is to have a 20 or 30-year plan. Until you start planting trees under shade you will not sit, you're not going to make any major progress, especially on the kind of issues that affect people's lives on this, this important a scale. Nothing is going to be done on guns, kids, as long as there is any Republican control in the Congress, and there is no other party other than the Democratic Party that can be a bulwark against that control. Period. End of story. And I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with anybody who wants to make a third party run and all that kind of stuff. As soon as we have 80 out of 100 seats in the Senate, and we have a margin of 150 votes in the House, and we've held the presidency for more than 2 cycles in the Democratic Party, then tell you what, build your green sock dem side party. Knock yourself out. Right? But until that point, the very idea that you can lay off the gas is an absurdity. And the very idea that there is an alternative that will make an impact other than allowing the illusion of the existence of the GOP to continue, because it is, but for what I would say is right-leaning independents who flip a coin basically every election cycle, pat themselves on the back for voting for Obama to give them a break on voting for Trump and his ilk forever. But for that crowd, the entirety of the responsibility in these areas lies on us. Now and forever, ever forward, in every election cycle, period, end of story. Fall in love and fall in line, because anything else short of that is going to guarantee that the Republicans maintain a control in this country they have not earned, simply by you taking your foot off the gas. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Eating my cereal. I think we went to break. I'm just going to assume.
Yeah, did you not hear the music?
Yeah,
Nope.
I didn't hear Chicago either.
Nope.
But you hear me now.
Yes, we do.
Isn't
Yeah.
technology wonderful?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a kink in the hose. That's my guess.
Paul, go grab the hose. See if there's any kinks in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's getting splashed in the face with water, so I think he fixed it.
Okay, good. All right, perfect.
And now he's walking around shirtless. You're welcome, Hal.
Mm-hmm. I've turned the studio into like Blue Steel Central or Top Gun.
Blue Steel.
Yeah. Hold on one second. Try to get this over here. And the chat is coming up on there. Excellent. Okay. No, I'm eating Raisin Bran this morning because I was in a big hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Somebody said, greed is bad. Greed is a mental illness. Well, if it's a mental illness, then nobody's responsible.
Yeah.
It's not a mental illness. It's a character flaw. Val Kilmer did all the best acting. The scene between the two of them was great.
30 seconds.
I'm seeing it tomorrow with my mother-in-law.
What?
It was very cute. She said, she asked me if I was planning on seeing it, and I was like, I don't know. She said, well, if you ever do plan to see it, I want to go.
Nice.
Which is the only time she's ever said that.
I know I'm only on 1 day a week.
I loved it.
I don't have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive, and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. By the way, that opinion I stressed in the previous segment is not going to go away. Think of it as a rhetorical act of character on my part. There is no talking me out of that. Don't ever try. Don't waste your breath. Don't give me the but maybe, because I take that as you rudely assuming that I came to that decision about things quickly and in the last couple of weeks because of some flippant attitude I have about voting and whatnot. No, this is after years, especially I would say decades, especially when it comes to gun issues. Just standard run-of-the-mill gun registration and assault weapons ban. The fact that, once the Republicans allowed the Violence Against Women Act to expire, and we had to wait until we had control of the place to re-up it, I'm out. I'm out of the ridiculous conversation that there's another there, that there's a maybe, I can never be concerned with the way Republicans are going to lean ever again. We have one
they
part.
Just pretend that the problem's been fixed.
Right.
And it has not. The problem was less reported because there were laws against it, just like the Voter Protection Acts.
Right. Exactly. And so I will not, I don't get where there's, obviously, like after Anna Kasparian's freak out on TYT about a week ago, directly related to the leak of the forthcoming rule by the Supreme Court that will effectively eliminate the nationwide right to an abortion that women have and leave it back up to the states, where they will have Republicans will have undue control over women's bodies again because they have 2 senators for a state with 650,000 people in it. Versus California, which has 2 senators with somewhere in the order of 25 million or more. How many? I have to look at the current numbers. I'm blitzing on that. Somebody in the chat will know the current population of California. Still got talk about representation without taxation. Everybody clamors about the Senate. That if we could make DC a state and give it 2 senators. And maybe Puerto Rico, then we'd have that. Okay. I'm with you on Puerto Rico. Totally going to happen. Get used to the idea. Just a matter of time. Only will happen if we increase our number of Democrats in the Senate. Only way it'll happen. Ever, ever, ever. Only way it'll happen. Period. End of story. Get to work. Secondly, DC's not going to happen. It's a city, not a state. It has it has a congressional representative that speaks on its behalf, but it's basically split between Maryland and Virginia. All of its needs are met through there. It gets outsized funding over any other city in the United States because the capital is there. Budget-wise, it's not hurting for money. It's not going to happen. It's 39.35 million people in California. Thank you, Carl. And 2 senators. Wyoming, 680,000, 2 senators. We got work to do. So this is not something I bend on. This is not something that I'm ever going to let slide. We have a responsibility as Democrats, as people who, if you care about any of the things you allegedly care about, you get points on the board every single time. You never give ground away, especially when you know that in the case of the Senate in particular, you're already ice skating uphill. You're already operating in a deficit. There are already these easily claimed red states, which, by the way, many of them, including Wyoming, Oklahoma, and all these other states, are going to start drifting blue because of technological people who want yards and ranches and stuff like that, working, who don't have to work from home. You watch it as rural broadband expands the worker base, the managerial worker base of the entire United States. And people can go, well, I could raise my kids in a city or I could raise them out on a farm. I'm going to give that a shot. We're going to, have our own unpasteurized milk and blah, 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 and live off the grid, all that stuff that's coming. That is going to, over the next 10 years, drift the politics of our country in those particular places. But only if people stick to their guns and, no pun intended, and vote every single time. Somebody in the chat. Oh my gosh! Thank you, Hal Vickery. Keep speaking out. We need more voices like yours to keep people active and to inspire more people to get off their butts. Thank you, Hal. I will. I insist. And there is no, like I said, there's no middle version of this. There is no, like in what I do is in midterms, I vote this way. And then, I show up in presidential elections and I do no. No, 100 times no. If you're choosing between somebody that you like and somebody can get elected in your district, that makes the difference between a Dem taking the seat and a Republican taking the seat, even if you feel like you have to hold your nose, then you are outnumbered in that place. The representative government in that area truly is represented more by that person. And if you believe in representative government, then you participate in that. And you participate as an adult. And that, other than that, I have no opinion. I have, that's where I always go every time we have, especially issues around women's rights and guns that come up in this country. Because in many cases, in many areas, this is our battle to lose as Democrats. Because the vast majority of Americans support a woman's right to choose. They believe in the kind of Clinton idea of safe, rare, and legal. There's no extremes in it. And if you allowed Republicans, to gain any ground anywhere, the way they muscle their way into the politics of someplace is by stifling a woman's right to choose, taking away that safe, rare, and legal part, and leaving women and their health in danger. And then they go, well, we'll give you exceptions in the area of rape and incest for about 2 weeks. And then once they're allowed to continue, once they make that goal, the irony that people on the left and people, Democrats decry incrementalism and yet are seeing exactly incrementalism succeed in the removal of women's rights. Because what has happened? Constant stacking of the court, them all lining up behind Donald Trump. And there was a bunch of nose holders in that who ran on the idea that, he's an imperfect man and he's flawed and all these things, but God put him there for one task. I don't care about anything else. He's going to do this one thing. He's going to get Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett on that court. They're going to trick you. They're going to ease in with Gorsuch and go, see, he's not going to be that bad. So the next two people can get set up. And then they set up these laws in these states stage by stage, and then they fight them in the lower courts to get them to the SCOTUS where they know the fix is in, and then women's rights are a matter of history. That is, ladies and gentlemen, incrementalism at work, and you are on the receiving end of it because it worked. It is a functioning strategy, and to give up a functioning strategy, especially when you know the majority of people are on your side, you could actually build bigger. Your bricks are bigger in the wall and the structure that you are building. And when we come back, we'll talk about the gun issue on that regard, because we used to have an assault weapons ban, and it wasn't Republicans that kept it in place. We'll be back. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio. We're at infotainmentwars.com. You can like and subscribe there, support the show just by checking the little thing and saying I subscribe. It's that easy. We're at like 35K now. It's amazing. We'll be back. Yeah, Vina, I mean, like she's saying, remember, Republicans don't give a fuck about women except for baby makers. It's right. They're broodmares for the state. And if you purity test Democrats out of the place because they've stated their support for safe, rare, and legal, and somebody in AOC's district says no, abortion on demand up to 8 months and 28 days, and it's just got to be no limitations whatsoever, you're not going to win that fight with anybody. You just simply are not. And if that's the purity test, if that's who you're brooming out because somebody says safe, rare, and legal, a woman should have the right to choose safe, rare, and legal, and that's not enough, ultimately you're going to hand that district over to a right-winger who will say safe, rare, and legal, but not mean it. They want women to be broodmares. I'm voting out Ron Johnson in Wisconsin like we did with Paul Ryan, Scott Walker. What happened? Yep. Absolutely shit pants. That's... I always get my hackles up when I hear any generation about the entire population of a specific party. I understand that, Wes. But the Republican Party, the idea that Republicans in general as human beings are necessarily quote unquote evil or whatever is one thing. But their behavior is what I'm referring to. And the fact that they have basically broomed out anyone who isn't on board with that. So that group is that name. It's no longer, and notice I won't even say conservatives in that regard. Because conservatives themselves could arguably have a safe, rare, and legal conversation. Or a sensible gun reform, conversation.
60 seconds.
Thank you. But the Republicans as a party are defining themselves as this. They are slowly but surely, and not so slowly anymore, eliminating anybody who in the party. They are doing the same purity test on their side that we have made the mistake of doing on our side a few times, only in the extreme. They have been more successful at it than we have, thank God, in some ways, because they're also marginalizing themselves at the same time. How they tossed all that out the window and are going full on fascist. I think it's, fascism like Nazism is, tend to be overused. Thank you. Tend to be overused, and I think they're more. They believe in.
This is Damian Perdue.
Christian authoritarianism.
Saturdays at 6 p.m. You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I thought there was going to be like a new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
See? And again, this is not opinion I'm going to waver on or bend on. I have been watching this stuff happen for far too long. I have seen Democrats come into office, pass laws that move the ball forward, 10 paces, and then have it erased entirely in midterms by coin flippers. And if that's a matter of self-identified independents doing that, then I have no say in it. It's not my party. It's not my group. I think being politically, quote unquote, independent is an absurdity. I think it's ridiculous that Sanders is an independent. I think it's absurd that Angus King is an independent. I also know they couldn't get elected as Democrats in their states. So that's a nose-holding choice that they're possibly making, and should tell you something about the quality of the brand versus the ideas that Democrats have to work towards fixing, and that does not include excluding human beings in their conversation. We have to, that's the problem with being inclusive. That's the challenge with being inclusive, because you are more responsible for being more open-minded and open-hearted than the other side is, and that's heavy lifting. That's a lot of work. You got to put up with a lot of. You got to watch that Overland window get jerked back and forth by slacktivists and weirdos. You have to listen to people who are talking themselves logically in circles to try and find somewhere inside, like, what's your ethical reason behind this, so we can have a real conversation about why you feel this way, because it doesn't sound like it's something you're thinking about. It sounds like something you're feeling about. And I seem to think that my feelings about a certain issue, especially when it comes to guns and a woman's right to choose, especially when it leads to saving her life so that, I don't know, she might be able to have a baby in the future. Go figure. That those are based on not just my intellectual understanding of the issue and my ethical beliefs that come from my philosophical leanings, but also emotionally, I don't like the idea of women having, killing or sterilizing themselves because they don't fall under one religion's view of how life should operate. That's, and so while there's a lot of these folks who are, what they would view themselves as pro-life, there's obviously a lot of hypocrisy there, especially when it comes to guns. The irony that these people seem to not recognize that the best thing that can ever happen with a gun is the worst day of your life. That a gun, at its best, is a necessary evil. Always has been, always will be. It is not a toy. It is not, a Beanie Baby or a Cabbage Patch doll meant for collection in that regard. There is appreciative skill and quality in the making of almost anything. As a person like Johnny Million, who's got far more guitars than we deserve. Right?
Facts.
Yes. There is an understanding that I get that you can improve skill on something and it's fun. I talked about this with Dino Badal on his show yesterday, about, he was like going to the range and I don't get it and stuff like that. I'm like, it's easy to get, because you can go to the range and it's the skill level is very narrow. If you can get it inside the body of the person drawn on the thing, you've improved from not hitting it at all. And that's a level of skill correction that excites people. It makes a big noise. It looks kind of cool because you've seen it in movies. All those things come together to make a culture around something that's easily sellable and the like. But the reality is that a gun is, like I said, at its best is a necessary evil. It's a terrible thing to have to need. And it's not impressive if you need it. It's not a good sign that it was necessary. It shows that there are other things you need to fix in your society a lot of times, or in just the general dealing with some of your fellow human beings, that those people need to fix themselves. That said, only time I've ever seen in my voting lifetime, which is since 1988, in my lifetime, the only improvement I've ever seen in the reduction of gun-related deaths, in laws being passed that did not infringe on people's base Second Amendment rights, but also kept everyone else safe, were done by Democrats. Every single time, without fail.
Yeah.
In the old days, they had a couple of crossover because of James Baker and other folks, making a point of reaching across the aisle, and because of the Reagan assassination attempt and those kind of things, there was some movement there. But since then, nothing but Democrats. And a Republican can't even run on it anymore. They can't even run sensibly on gun rules or laws because the GOP, the party itself, will not fund them. It is, it's a mechanic that is built into the organization. And the only way you're going to get, and again, we all know that AR-15 stands for abortion rifle. And that anytime, if you can't hit whatever you're shooting at to defend yourself in under 6 shots, you're probably defending yourself against the FBI and the police coming because you have a gun-running fentanyl or human trafficking business you're running out of your house. And again, special dispensation for people who live out in the middle of the woods. If certain states want to be a little more lax, that's one thing. But states that are high populous, that deal differently, where a stray bullet can hit 2 people easily, that's a different load to carry for the governments of those states than it is for these rural states where, there was this like gun advocate YouTuber that Tucker Carlson interviewed. And the guy was talking about, it's not the gun, it's the person, it's not the bullet, and the bullets don't know where they're going, and blah, blah, like this weird kind of, like almost babying them, the irony. Meanwhile, the guy lives out in the middle of nowhere where he could literally shoot in any direction and not hit anything but dirt and trees. So, of course, he has a different attitude than people who live in apartment buildings, subdivisions, or close quarters in a city or ride the subway. It's a different world. And that's what Obama was talking about when he said that people who advocate for gun, regulations are often talking at cross purposes with gun rights activists. They could meet in the middle. They're just missing the conversation that each is having. Again, the only time, though, you are going to have a legitimate conversation about the balancing of Second Amendment rights and public safety in regard to what constitutes an assault weapon, which I would call an anti-personnel weapon. It is meant for shooting people, and as many as possible, as quickly as possible, like the AR-15. The only time you're going to have a real conversation, a balanced, intelligent, reasonable conversation, is going to happen in the Democratic Party across from conservative to liberal, the extremes in the Democratic Party. And the great example I would give is Bernie Sanders, who has a D- from the NRA, not an F like most Democrats. They just automatically fail you on it.
Right.
But Bernie had to change his stance on guns when he was running for mayor, and he stuck to it ever since because Vermont is fairly rural and has a lot of gun rights activists in it. And so he's not 100%. Hillary Clinton was to the left of Bernie Sanders on guns. And that's what I'm talking about when I say you can have a conversation about the realities of the right to gun ownership that's codified in the Second Amendment, but also is codified right alongside a well-regulated militia, meaning you can have guns and all that kind of stuff. However, we want to know what you got. We want to know how you got it, who you got it from, why you're stacking it up, and if you're stacking ammo and you don't run a gun range, it's reasonable for the locals and the feds to come by and just ask you a couple questions and ask why. What exactly are you preparing for, and how come? And secondarily, if you feel that way, why aren't you in the National Guard? So this is our responsibility. The spectrum of Democrats available to you based on where you are may be too conservative or too liberal for your tastes. However, they are currently your only reasonable choice for a balanced, functional government with any weight and any ethical route going through it. Because the Republicans have as a party, and again, this doesn't mean Republicans throughout history. Abraham Lincoln is equally as guilty as the current crop. No, the party itself, in its current form, has put its lot in 100% with the gun lobby and the extremists of the open carry crowd, and an absolute control of a woman's right to her own bodily autonomy. That's it. There is no there otherwise in the current party. There might be, you got the Liz Cheneys and the Kitzingers around, but the party is running against Liz Cheney. The party is trying to drum her out. And Kinzinger is not running again because he's got to get out because he couldn't win his election again. The party has decided. They don't need any help from us. They've already made up their mind. And so we as Democrats need to make up our mind to commit to a 20-year plan. So what I'm asking of everybody is commit to 6 election cycles. Again, be involved in primaries. Try to get the best candidate you can possibly get through, and as solidly in your political camp as you can possibly get them. But once that's done, if they're successful, make sure you bring everybody else on board so they don't think of them as an enemy because you ran against internally as an enemy. And then make sure that if they don't, you put on your big boy britches and vote. Every time. Because without that, everything that people decry about another shooting, another mass shooting, guns on the streets, the murder rate, any of that stuff is all just lip service. It's all just talk. Because until the rubber hits the road, until you commit to constant and never-ending improvement of your electoral politics, then we will be doing this ad nauseum, on and on, with no change whatsoever. And all the things that we've done over the years that actually did help, like the assault weapons ban, all those things will continue to ebb and flow, come and go, and cause spikes. And those deaths are our responsibility. Are they your fault? No, I won't blame you for them. Is the change your responsibility? Absolutely. We'll be back right after this. Thank you, Carl, for committing to vote. Yes, if you're in the chat room and you're committed to voting, let us know. I know you've been. Most have been. Most know this. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in my show chat room. They're
pretty much.
Yeah.
Except for Naked HD.
Well, they vote with their dollars. They vote with their dangly bits. Thank you, Ninka. Connie's an election judge. We know you're in there. So, okay. Hold on. Whoops. Where'd this go? Hold on. I guess I should be happy that I'm getting as much trolling action as I am, simply because, our numbers are going up. Dropping off your ballot today. Excellent. Primaries are happening in a lot of states. There you go. Always vote. It's civics. And Hal, you're great. Hi, Johnny Million. Alyosha, thank you so much. Do you hear about the only Democratic district here in Kansas being redrawn in neighboring Republican district? It's so frustrating. Well, Dr. 13, again, those districts don't necessarily have to go Republican. What you've done is spread out the Democrats, and if the surrounding areas are
back in 20.
Thank you. Are 60-40, and you split up a strongly Democratic area that might be 80-20. Technically speaking, you could turn those other districts purple by accident. So not everything that they're doing is necessarily going to help the Republicans. That's why a lot of the election callers are saying it's basically a wash. It's up to the voter.
Attention, attention, stop what you're doing. Because we're coming back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
They went a little crazy with it, and I appreciate it.
Now let's get back with Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I realize I've been on a rant about that part of it, that most of the show today. But we will get to other stuff, and I do believe Philip Bittner will be joining us for the next hour, hopefully from Ukraine, to give us kind of an update on the stuff there. The U.S. government is sending HIMARS, these long-range missiles, to Ukraine. And there was this back and forth in the news, you'll recall, about a week ago. And I'm going to try and not throw my shoulder out, patting myself on the back for being right again. But I was saying that there was a back and forth in the news about whether or not the U.S. will send them. They're probably not going to, that there's a lot of dithering by the Biden administration, dithery, and that they're not, that they're necessary and we're leaving them hanging out to dry. And I said, what's really happening is they're having a conversation with the Ukrainians saying, you can have these, just don't launch them into Russian territory, because we don't want them to use it as a predicate to ultimately attack Poland, really, and to attack, Finland as they're signing up for NATO, and to just decide we're at war with NATO because U.S. missiles flew in, and here's a picture of this missile, and it's got American writing on it, and it hit this house, and yada, yada, even though we moved the house 6 blocks over and put it under poured it into the crater. That won't matter ultimately in that decision-making process. And so I said the U.S. government is basically going to give those things to the Ukrainians. All they're going to do is get in writing some sort of guarantee that you're not going to use them that they're not going to use them in actually Russian territory. That's it. And that's exactly what happened. This week, that agreement was reached specifically, and they found that they started the delivery almost immediately. They will arrive in the next week or so, and the Severodonetsk area that everybody was clamoring about, the Jimmy Dores of the world were saying this is proof the Ukrainians are losing because the Russians took some territory in the east of Ukraine, which they had previously claimed earlier, but also they, in this area of Severodonetsk, when it turns out that if you look at the terrain there, the Ukrainians made a choice to back away from Severodonetsk up into the hills, allow the Russians to go in, and then bomb the crap out of them from the hillside, basically using the advantage of high ground as you do in battle. And it worked. In a matter of 24 hours, that seized city is now 50% back in Ukrainian hands, not because they bombed that entire city, to drive them out, but because they strategically hit them as they were coming across these fields, and they had to draw back, and they don't have enough forces to take the entirety of the city. And that in and of itself is increasingly what's going to happen once the HIMARS are in there, because that allows them to move the howitzers closer, and then they're going to start brooming the Russians towards the border. Meanwhile, the Russians themselves are clamoring for nuclear war with the rest of the world, saying that a war with NATO was always part of the plan. That's fun. That's a fun part of the conversation, that they were always planning on a war with NATO. And that one of the guys on their Vladimir Zelenov show, 60 Minutes, that they have, which is ironically, it's an hour-long show about, but it's a live thing. It's like the Russian version of The Five on Fox. That during the conversation, their guy was saying, we're just testing our military and our weapons in Ukraine to use on NATO. We want to see what NATO has, the kind of stuff they bring into the battlefield, and then we'll know what they have, and we'll know how our stuff works, and then we're going to attack all the NATO countries next. And that was always the plan. These are people on Russian television in prime time on the primary news network. This is not, the namby-pamby fooling around, slow walking munition stuff that even Rand Paul is doing. This is not the MTG on Fox News making the argument that our money should be better spent at home, and we're defending this border thousands of miles away when our border is unsecure. That silly political conversation. That that belief that the United States can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Which, I mean, granted, when Trump was president, we were having trouble drinking water and walking a ramp at the same time, I think is where that went. But ultimately, this is an order of magnitude greater and indicative of what was always part of the plan. The belief system in Russia is becoming more stark, more obvious, and clearer with every passing day. And their belief system is that this is a war of cultures, that there is an intrinsic, however bizarre, difference between being Russian and being European. To that end, it's a very, I can't imagine the United States starting a war with Mexico or Canada on the pretense that we're not North Americans. You know what I mean? Like that's the quality of that argument.
Right.
And to threaten nuclear war because of an assumed label based on geographical connection, which has nothing to do with the underlying belief systems of or the religious belief systems, the philosophy, the history of any of these countries. France is a European country. Germany is a European country. They're under the European Union, but culturally they're strikingly different. And as a tourist, as anybody who has lineage from those countries, you see them as incredibly different, strikingly so, especially if you look around World War I and World War II era. But at the same time, none of them are fighting a war with each other because they don't want to be called Europeans. It's like an Asian war because China and Vietnam don't want to be seen as Asian countries, or the Middle East saying we're not the Middle East, we're the southwestern corner of the Middle East, and therefore we need to, I guess, engage in world-ending wars with people over labels. The irony that one of the predicates that Vladimir Putin was using is that the West is full of gender-confused oyster eaters. That was his thing. I'm like, I don't know where the oyster thing came from. Like, if you're a sexual hedonist, I suppose you're gonna need to stack somehow. But I mean, maybe it's because Viagra's too close to home for him or something, or it's a Black Sea thing. Maybe there's oysters that come out of the Black Sea I'm not aware of, and that's a thing. But the idea that the West doesn't even know what gender we are. We're confused about that, and therefore, meanwhile, these people are, yes, he said oyster eaters, medium T. That's a direct quote.
Yeah.
He's saying that the West is having cultural fights over what it means to be a man or woman, or a male or female, or binary or non-binary, or all those kind of things. And say what you will about that, and it certainly gets contentious at times. And there's a definite cultural back and forth that's happening everywhere around here. But at no point has either side threatened to nuke the other side out of existence with any seriousness. It is a level of absurdity that continues to stack every day. And Philip Bittner is going to be joining us in this and I want to talk about a little bit of the ratcheting up of talk, because I have some theories. I have some theories that the United States, for example, we have a ridiculous amount of nuclear weapons. We have the quality of our nuclear weapons, like how fast they go, the damage they can do, is absurd. It's off the charts. It is the greatest nuclear arsenal on the planet. Everybody else is like way far behind, and we don't talk about it. You know why we don't talk about it? because we know it works and we don't want to use it. And we don't need to threaten using it because we have conventional warfare capabilities that are also off the charts where we can carry this out without any of that, without needing that part of it. I just don't think you start clamoring about nuking the world if you're winning and if you're convinced of your own superiority. It sounds to me like the kind of like barking a chihuahua does when it's in a corner. You ever meet somebody who has one of those little pocket dogs and then you go to pet it and it just loses its mind and its eyes roll back? It's like, and you're like, all right, that's adorable. I recognize you can bite me. And if you have a disease, I'm probably going to get it from that bite. But in general, if I really needed to, but relax, dog, but those are the ones that freak out the most, right? Those are the ones. Big dogs just kind of let them bounce around. It just seems like it's leaning that way. We got to take a break. We'll come back. Philip Hittner is going to be joining us from Ukraine. And we'll talk a little bit about Severodonetsk, and we'll talk a little bit about where the Russians think this is going. I don't think it's going the way they expect, even now. We'll be back. All right, here we go. And then, let me see if I can bring it. There he is. Philip Hittner. He's frozen, though. I can tell. He's frozen still. It's a good picture of him, though. This is him signing up on his phone. Phil, you can't, you're not moving, but we see. We got centering. Yeah. Don't worry. Hold on. I'll fix it. Dink. There you go. Now you got more room. And then, see, because let's see. Go to Johnny Million. See if he's zooming out and here you go. I'll center it. I got you. Don't worry.
Nothing still says Johnny Million 1.
Oh, I switched the camera. Hold on. Oh, he's coming. Quit it. You're doing that on purpose, you big jerk. Johnny's moving around while I'm trying to move him around. I fixed the other one and I have to fix this one. There you go. Okay. You're welcome.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yay.
Hooray!
Okay, great.
It's Philly Pittner.
Yeah.
Really, one of these days, want to get the earbuds working because there's a lot of sound coming off the street. So
it's kind of charming, though. I gotta admit, we don't have a problem with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fear not.
How's everybody doing?
Yeah.
Doing great.
Yeah. No, I need to get the old beard trimmed.
No,
that's what I was just thinking.
I don't think so. I think
one of these.
You need a Viking hat. That's all you need. I'm telling you. You just need to balance it out with horns. I'm telling you, it will work. Yeah.
The Russian shapatsky.
Oh yeah. Hats. Right. Or the Spartan helmet or whatever.
Yeah.
But any garment worn in the Northmen, I think you'll be fine. And by the way, people in the chat are saying
weird.
no.
It's a weird thing. It's lots of things are open, but weirdly enough, the barbershops aren't one of them.
Well,
it's kind of hit or miss. So when I have to go back to Lviv tomorrow, so I'll get it trimmed up there.
There you go. Well, everybody's in support of the beard. They want it to like expand even larger, so they don't worry about it.
Oh
honestly.
No.
Yeah.
So it gets really unruly.
I don't know. I've already bought you a Santa hat and given you a job this winter, so I've already done it.
That will be my job in my retirement.
Because you're pleasantly jolly in spite of the circumstance you're in fairly regularly, and that's a hard trait to find in a human being. And I'll have you know that my grandfather was Santa Claus for the city of Cincinnati for 20 years. He was the one that was in the parades.
Like the parade?
Yeah. He's that
nice.
And he didn't have a beard all year round, but he did have a curly Q mustache all year round. So he just slapped the beard on and the mustache was real. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I've got some wax. Maybe I'll do that.
There you go. Yeah, roll them up. And he was in a barbershop quartet the rest of the time.
Lots of hipsters in Kiev.
Oh, I bet.
I'd fit right in.
Absolutely. I had this not happened, I think the steampunk moment. I happen to think like Ukraine Burning Man is going to be a thing after this is all over.
They used to have, before Crimea was taken by the Russians, they used to have a music festival called Kazantip, and it was very Burning Man.
And
it was very, very,
Kazan,
very Burning Man.
My Ukrainian's not very good, but Kazan means just the, I think. Sorry.
It's terrible.
Thank you very much. Thanks. I'm very proud. So everybody in the chat saying we must attend. I agree. Everybody must go to Just the Tip this
when
year.
they take Crimea back,
right?
If that ever happens,
that's right. There will be, especially if they get one corner of it at one point, there'll be all the Just the Tip jokes will fly. I have no doubt.
Oh yeah.
So obviously the HIMARS are coming. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I have been looking at the Severodonetsk stuff as well, and in the last little bit, the Ukrainians basically have kept that high ground and just driven the Russians out of the territory they claimed fairly quickly. They still got a chunk of the city.
And the civilians.
Yeah,
the civilian, they still have a chunk of the city, but the civilian side of the military, the kind of, the civilian side of the military structure is saying that they're starting to do a counteroffensive and that it's finding success.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much we don't know. We don't know. The military is very close. They're very tight-lipped about it.
They should be.
But we haven't seen. Look, we have not seen. No, as they should. You're right. We haven't seen the beginning of the counteroffensive. It hasn't even begun yet.
That's right. And the Republican the Republican Party, Rand Paul. Thank you. Rand Paul and their ilk were trying to slow walk some of the arms. Ultimately, because of Schumer, didn't work because they had plenty of time. So the stuff is on schedule. So nothing is holding it back. And I think the Russians were counting on it.
There's something there.
Yeah,
I'm back.
We see you. We see you. There you go. You're in and out a little bit. We're coming back. Here we go.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT. Right now, I'm live on infotainmentwars.com and, of course, at twitch.tv/Hal Sparks with our dear friend Philip Ittner, who is in Kiev. You're in Kiev right now. Yes?
I am.
Yeah. In Ukraine, and Johnny Million, of course, live in Chicago as well. We're just spread out all over the world. It's the wonders of technology. I got to say, it's incredible.
It's amazing.
It's crazy. Now, Philip, as we were leading up to the top of this, and I'm sure we're going to gather some questions in the chat room. If you're on Twitch, or you're on YouTube or Facebook, watching the show, just put in the chat, put in the chat so Johnny can see it. Attach his name or
baby.
Yeah, three question marks before your question. Maybe that's the way we can spot them, make it easier for Johnny so he can gather them up.
Those questions.
Yeah. So I've been watching. This. There's like 3 or 4 strategists online that are keeping track of the geolocatable pictures where they know. Where the Russians are, what advances they've made, where the Ukrainians have pushed back, where there's one guy who tracks the volume of Russian BTGs, battalion tactical groups in their territory, and they seem to be moving chunks of these groups around in, and I must say, I'll choose my words very carefully, incredibly stupid ways. The Russians lost another general this week who was piloting an aircraft. He had just done a bombing run on a civilian area, and as he was pulling out, he was shot out of the sky, and there was no time to eject. They know that he perished in the flight. And this guy, fascinating story, had been demoted, like I think in 2012, for taking control of a plane he was not checked out on. He was in a plane with he and his buddy in the Russian military took one of the planes and just decided to go for a fly. He wasn't checked out on it. He took the controls of the thing, and they went into a tailspin. They had to eject, and it was this, multi-million dollar aircraft. The guy was, and they were both drunk, of course. It was. This is well-known story about this guy. He died this week because he, even as a general, was flying actual attack formations, and he was leading a group of a BTG group that were continually trying to cross on these pontoon bridges. We know the famous one where they destroyed the pontoon bridge and all these vehicles and hundreds of men around it. That's happened 3 times since then, trying to cross the same river with different groups of people. And they keep stacking these people in the same place as targets, as if the Ukrainian drones don't exist. It's amazing to me.
Well, that's their military doctrine, and it always has been. And I don't want to be too flippant about it. I don't want to say that they have absolutely no regard for their military forces, but they have a lot of people. That's kind of one of their assets that they have in the Russian military. And they do. I mean, you just look at their history, their military history. Their doctrine is such that they just throw bodies at it.
Right. They used to have a lot of people. They don't anymore. Now that in 2 weeks' time, the Russians went from allowing 30-year-olds to join to 35, 40, 45-year-old, now 50 years old. You can still you can join the Russian military in 2 weeks. That is not something that you do because 6 months of battle have gone awry and you're being driven back by the overwhelming force. In 2 weeks' time, that means they tried to bring up every 35-year-old they could find, and nobody was coming. So they tried 40s, and nobody was coming for days and days. And they've got months, if not years, they're going to have to train these guys to get them up and ready for battle.
Yeah, I mean, I've told you the story before, I think. I mean, they've been notifying people that are in their 50s and who may have gone to basically an ROTC training thing for like a few weeks 30 years ago when they were in their 20s. And those people are being notified that they might be called up. You don't do that unless you're desperate.
Right. And again, the Ukrainians were doing it at the beginning, like leading up to this war. And in the first couple of weeks, there were all these, they were showing the Azov battalion, the much maligned Azov battalion, teaching civilians how to fight, like with wooden cutout AK-47s and M16s, literally that they, that whatever gun they would cut them out of wood and teach them tactically how to move, how to point the gun, and move in tactical groups so they wouldn't hurt each other. All that kind of stuff that was happening. That's understandable when your country is under attack by a giant, overwhelming force from a country that is 8 times the size of yours, as far as its military and the like. It doesn't make any sense when you're the Russians. It's stunning to me that this is still going on.
Well, and look, they're having to turn people away. That's how intense it is here in Ukraine.
Right.
They're having to turn people away. And I know people in Ukraine, Ukrainian men of a certain age, who are upset because they're not able to go and shoot Russians.
Right.
They want to kill as many Russians as they possibly can. That's the attitude here. So look, there's a lot that's been going on in the last week, and there's been some talk of like some dissension in the ranks and stuff like that. There's a little bit of that going on, certainly. But overwhelmingly, this country remains unified.
Yeah.
And if anything, the vast majority of people in this country would pick up a weapon at a moment's notice and head towards wherever the Russians are.
Well, I guess that's my first question for you, and we'll get into, we're heading towards a break, and then we'll talk about it in the next one as well. That the parts of the country, the western part of the country, seems to be kind of operating almost at full steam again at this point, considering how brutal the fighting is in the east. comparatively. That said, arguably they're kind of used to it. They've been dealing with the Donbass fighting for a long time. The difference is they now have got the backing of the rest of the world, and the idea that we now have an ambassador, I believe, in Kiev, if I'm not mistaken. So there's the Russians are now in a position that they haven't been in for a while, that if they fire a missile into Kiev and they hit the U.S. ambassador, that's an that's an order of magnitude. Are they ready for that progression? And I'm sure you've seen some of the Russian 60 Minutes stuff about how they are talking about this. Now, let's take a break right now. When we come back, I just want
let's take a break. We'll talk about it on the other side.
Yeah, on the other side of this, we'll discuss. Of course, in every war, there's going to be back and forth because people will feel they've got a better idea of how to win it, or some people might be sympathetic to a peace process. That's always going to happen, always has, in every fight, in every country, forever and ever. The difference will be, when that starts happening in Russia. We'll be back right after this. Philip, did you hear about the Azov Battalion changing their insignia?
I did, yeah. I did.
So Jimmy Dore had a whole segment about how they're rebranding themselves to not be neo-Nazi anymore, and he had this article up that was like, because it's being misused by Russian propagandists, without any sense of irony about his own, like him being that propagandist. It was amazing to watch. I love watching talking points die. That was one of the best I've seen in ages.
Yeah, and then there's this former Fox guy that I saw you do a couple of commentaries on.
Clayton,
and his wife.
Who's
just ridiculous.
They're living in Portugal, avoiding prosecution and lawsuits for like real estate fraud, and they're doing pro-Russian propaganda. I mean, it's good money if you can make it, I guess. It's one of the do they sanction super chats out of Russia? How do you do it? YouTube is still online.
And what's crazy about it is apparently they went to Serbia, and I was like, so you'll go to Serbia, but you won't come here to Ukraine,
right?
And yet you'll diss Ukraine,
right?
All the time. But you've never been here, but you will go to Serbia, and I understand the distinction. I understand the difference. There's not an open war going on in Serbia right now.
We're coming back.
Serbia, Serbia's relationship with Russia is messed up.
Hold on. Welcome back to the show. We, of course, have a multitude of conversations about stuff during the breaks as well at infotainmentwars.com, or, of course, at twitch.tv/HalSparks. Support the show by subscribing today, like and thumbs up, notification bell, all that stuff I'm supposed to say as a pro streamer. Now, I just want to get your kind of update, Philip, as well, on how the Ukrainians are feeling about the Russian response to all this, because I've been watching that the Russian media monitor stuff, and holy crap, they don't sound like a winning team. They sound like they're in a bad huddle.
Yeah, and the one thing that, of course, they don't need to go through Media Matters because they have the common language. So, every time you hear kind of the more bellicose things coming out of Russia, it only serves as an added incentive for the Ukrainians, because the more crazy stuff that comes out of Russia about, like, we have to actually destroy the concept of there being a Ukraine.
Yeah,
they're just like, well, okay, but you're not giving us a lot of choice here.
Yeah,
so it just reinforces the Ukrainians' will to fight, because they recognize, and look, they don't have to wait to hear it from Russia on First Channel in Moscow. They know perfectly well. They know the Russians as well as anybody on the planet.
Right.
They've lived under their thumb for centuries. They know they know their ways.
Yeah.
And, they know that if they lose this fight, that's why, look, I keep coming back to this so many times. And I did a roundtable last night with some people who were like, doom and gloom. They're taking Donbass. Are you still optimistic, Phil? And I'm like, you don't understand. Whatever happens in the Donbass and whatever happens with whatever territorial, whatever lines are drawn, whatever negotiation happens, they win by surviving. They win by, there is a country called Ukraine, and that is not something that has been around a lot. And they have been fighting for that for centuries, literally centuries.
Yeah.
And so for them, you know, just when the dust settles, if there is a country that is not subjugated by a neighboring country and it is called Ukraine, it will be a major victory for them.
Correct.
And I don't see how that doesn't happen. I can't see a scenario where there isn't a Ukraine after that. And then we have to see what happens, because then already also, by the way, you know, we're going to start to see a partisan guerrilla war in the territory that was taken. I'm very, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't see into the future, but I would bet you anything, knowing the nature of these people. And you know, it's a little different out in the East. They are closer to Russia, but even still, given the way the Russians have acted, I do think that even in the occupied territories that are as they stand now, they may have taken it, but holding it is a very different thing.
Right. Well, that's, you know, in any battle, and I mean, look at the history of World War II, look at the history of World War I, look at Vietnam, any of these, there's always this back and forth. The question ultimately becomes who is building a sort of an entrenchment that holds on. Well, the occupied territory always has a leg up in this area because they own the streets and the territory already. You have to take it from them, then you have to hold on to it. The Russians have, if you look at this in the context of this being one long battle, one long war, since they took the East and since they took Crimea, you could argue that this has been going on this entire time. And this is exactly the same problem the Russians have had. They have been trying to hold Donbass and Crimea since 2014. This has all been about that. This has just escalated because they decided to go for it because they were, you know, tired of fighting on a smaller scale, and ultimately they want the whole thing.
Yeah, and let's not sugarcoat this as well. I mean, there are people out in the Donbass who are not very pleased with a lot of what Ukraine has done over the last 8 years because it's been an active war zone, and so there's been an exchange of fire. So you know, civilians get caught up in that. So there is some animosity towards Kiev, but the territories that are now being taken are places where infrastructure has been built, most notably in Kherson and Mykolaiv. Those are not pro-Russian spots, not nearly what you might see in Lugansk or Donbass. And I would argue that's even artificially been created by Russia as well, to the extent that it is. So they're gonna have more problems than they are aware of when they continue to occupy territory, because there is we've talked about this in the past, but I'll say it again. There's a fundamental difference between Ukraine and Russia in that Russia is hearkening back to a former glory. Ukraine is looking for a bright future once they break free of centuries of oppression and colonial rule. And so that is a positive message. And also, they live differently. When the Russian soldiers rock up into some small town in Ukraine, they are shocked to see flat screen TVs. They're stealing microwaves, for goodness sakes.
Right.
You know, because the Ukrainians live like Europeans.
Right. And there's been some apparently chafing going on between the Russians that have been transplanted into that part of Ukraine on behalf of the Russian government, kind of like moving people in, just the same way the Chinese are doing in Xinjiang with the Han Chinese people, where they were literally, you know, the Chinese government has been putting a Han male in the homes of married Uyghur couples, with the idea being is that if they take the man away to a camp and he never comes back, the woman will essentially have a half Han kid. Like, it's gnarly. It's it's quite
Yeah,
Germanic.
and here the ethnic cleansing includes, and we just had it on International Children's Day, and I put out a vlog yesterday about it. Is the announcement that the sheer level of people that they have been taking from the occupied territories and sending into Russia. I mean, tens of thousands. If we can take President Zelensky's word at it, 200,000 children.
Right.
Have been taken from their homes. 200,000 children have been taken from their homes in Ukraine and resettled in Russia, and that includes forced adoptions. I mean, it's just the brutality of what the Russians are doing here is on a completely different level, and nothing we've seen before. On the European continent.
Well,
since World War II, I would even say the Balkans wars weren't this bad.
Right, agreed. But it's also a strategy that was very heavily around during Tsarist Russia and predating that. The idea of taking the children of another tribe and enslaving them, or using them to pad your own numbers in a certain area, especially if they're of the same basic genetic cut, which happened all through the Slavic areas.
Russia's demographics are not good.
Right. And he even admitted it. Yeah. That was the other thing. Putin admitted the other day that they have a true demographic problem, which I was shocked to have him actually say out loud, or at least in a pre-taped thing. That's the other thing too. So the Christopher Steele, famously known for the Steele dossier, right?
Yeah.
The story of the PP tape and the like, has said that according to his insiders, and he was, as former MI6, and he has these connections with these Russians over there, that Putin is incredibly ill, that he's got, blood cancer or stomach cancer, that he's on he's in really bad shape. He needs apparently medical help every half hour. So he has these meetings, which when they edit them together look like these long drawn out meetings. But in reality, every time they cut away, they're taking him out of the room and his team is helping him. Does that, I've never seen him as a true believer, and some people find, their God, no matter how nefarious, on their deathbed, is that conversation happening around Ukraine about, is this his last dying effort to be, of ego, to try and get a statue of himself by reclaiming Ukraine? And if he goes sometime soon, somebody sensible might step in and go, well, never mind.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with Ukrainians here, and it's a mixture of good, I hope he dies soon,
right,
and oh my goodness, that means he's got very little to lose,
right,
and that scares us.
Yeah.
So I've had that I've had both of those conversations with Ukrainians, not only here in Kiev, but of course back in Lviv. In Lviv, they're a little bit more like, hope he dies. Because they're less likely to get it in the neck if he really does try and do something. I mean, Kiev is high on the list of targets for the Russians to really try and demolish, because one of their strategic goals has always been to destroy the government here.
Yeah.
So people here are a little bit more like, I don't know, that puts us in a bad situation, but.
Yeah,
they're also not. Look, this is also not a surprise to them. We are watching. We in the West, and I don't mean I mean you have been wonderful, Al and Johnny. You guys have been great, but you're over there and we're here.
Yeah.
So this is our life. We digest every possible thing that we can get our hands on, and so the fact that Putin is sick is not a surprise to anybody in Ukraine.
Right.
They're like, in other words, ice is cold and water's wet.
Yeah.
It's been an open secret for a very, very long time in the former Soviet Union, and particularly within Ukraine.
Right.
So, because this is their life, and also because there's connections, and there's family connections between Ukrainians and Russians, and they don't have to go through the filter of a language translation, or
right.
They know that something is up. Something is very, very bad in the Kremlin. Something is not working right. And I've got Russian friends as well who've been telling me for months, a better part of a year, that there was something wrong with Putin, and that there was a health issue, but also that there was something bad happened to him during COVID. A lot of talk that COVID really, really changed him. And maybe those two things are not mutually exclusive. Maybe he has been diagnosed for quite some time and was aware that was,
well, one of the concerns was that
his health.
He's got immunocompromised because of the cancer treatment he's on and cannot get vaccinated, and therefore is afraid that if he gets the infection, especially as bad as Delta was, and if you look at the arc of his panic and the timing of stuff, the Delta wave after the wild type, both of those were the biggest spikes in deaths. And just like the Chinese vaccine, the Russian one doesn't work. It's not great. It's not,
well, the Sputnik. Here's an interesting note about the Sputnik.
It's stolen from AstraZeneca.
There you go. Stolen from Oxford. Stolen from a British lab.
Right.
Was hacked and stolen, and it was not complete. So they rushed to get it out based on incomplete data that they stole from the Brits.
And AstraZeneca's one is the one that is having the most sort of blowback as far as secondary health problems. That's why it didn't get cleared in the United States. There's been some secondary neurological issues that people have been talking about, and all of it could point to that he got that inoculation, and it's causing him, depression, paranoia, nervous tingles, like back spasms, all the stuff that you hear about, all makes sense in the concept of this. And also, the other story was that this Kirilo Budanov, who speaking to the Ukrainian Times, said that not long after they started their invasion, he survived an assassination attempt. And the question was it inside or outside? We're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm sure we've got questions in the chat, and I want to get to those.
We got questions.
In the second half of this hour. Philip Bittner is joining us live from Kiev, and Johnny Million's farming questions for you guys. I
got plenty.
And I'm trying not to talk too much. We'll be back right after this. Yeah. Yeah, Kirilo Budanov, the head of the Chief Intelligence Directorate of
that's right.
Ukrainian's Ministry of Defense, says there's an attempt on the life of him after the start of the war. In an interview, he said, quote, "There was an attempt to assassinate Putin. He was even attacked," it said, "by representatives of the Caucasus not so long ago." This is non-public information. It was an absolutely unsuccessful attempt, but it really happened. It was about 2 months ago.
He means Chechens.
Yeah.
He means Chechens.
That the Chechens tried to kill him. Right.
I mean, look, I love the Ukrainians. I love the Ukrainians, but I take everything that the Ukrainians say with a very, very large grain of salt.
Course. Yeah. And they also know how ego-based the Russian both media and government are, and the way you mess with them is by making ego attacks like that. Like, you're sick, you're not strong, you're not a man anymore, you're not, gone are the days of riding bears bareback.
If anybody was going to do it, it would be Kadyrov. He's the only one with the stones to try and pull that off. Right. Because I don't know if Kadyrov is delusional enough to actually think that. I don't know what his objective would be in bumping off Vladimir Putin, but maybe he wants Chechnya liberated, or maybe he's so delusional he thinks he can rise. I mean, Stalin was a Georgian,
right?
So he rose to supremacy.
Right. Welcome back to the show. So we were just talking during the break about the potential for whether or not there was an assassination attempt and from the Chechens on Vladimir Putin. Now, the Chechens, there's a long history of, there was that famously Chechen separatists, the separatists are always a funny word when you're talking about getting someone out of your country. It's very funny. Like, I don't know how the Russians have managed to do that, but they have managed to define people whose country they invade as separatists. It's, talk about 1984. But the Chechens, they took those a bunch of people hostage in a theater, and the Russians just decide to kill everybody. They just basically gassed the place, hostages and all, and just said, "We're done." And the guy who, I just don't see those people as being tremendously forgiving, and yet supposedly these folks are in the are in the fight right now in Ukraine.
Yeah, no, Kadir, it's actually one of the elements of the Russian military that the Ukrainians keep a very close eye on. But you're right. It's weird that there was the theater in Moscow. There was, of course, that awful incident at the school in Beslan, where it's another. The only reason I'm going to talk a little bit more about that is because it shows you, it gives you an insight into the Russians' mentality. Because both in the theater and both in Beslan, they could have taken people prisoner and pumped them for information, but instead, their knee-jerk, their basic response is, there's a nail, I got a hammer, everything I see is a nail, because that's the tool I use. And they could have gone into the theater, for example, and not done I remember I had just recently left Moscow when that happened, and I remember that they had a whole thing about how the mixing of the anesthetic that they used, they overdid it, and that's why they killed a whole bunch of them. But they didn't. And then when they went in, a lot of the Chechens who had taken the theater were alive but groggy, and they just executed them. And it's like, I get that mentality, I do, but it's so counterproductive. And I think that, again, why I'm mentioning this, why I'm going into this, because it shows you the mentality of Russia's use of force and use of violence. They don't look at there isn't. We do it very differently. Let's not go into how we do it. I'm talking about the Russians. The Russians' use of violence and power and military force is a very different thing than ours. They use it without restraint, because in their mind, once you decide to go down that road, if you make the decision to use violence and to use power and to use your military, then you are already past the point of control and you just go for it. It's all in. So, that has lessons for this war as well, and why we see the brutality of the Russians in this war, because they don't do it by half measures. You're all in or nothing.
Let's get to some of the questions, because I know I have a ton of them, so I just want to make sure we get some of the ones that are in the chat room. Johnny, who do we have first?
So Ed's 3D Tech is asking, has Philip heard about the Gray Eagles, and if Ukraine has them yet?
The Gray Eagles? No, I haven't. Is that a military system? Is that the? I think that might be the thing coming from the one of the Scandinavian countries, a missile system or something coming from one of the Scandinavian countries. I don't know. I don't know if that's in country.
Okay, so it's a drone. It's a General Atomics, the Gray Eagle, previously called the Warrior, also called the Sky Warrior or ERMP, extended range multipurpose. So these are,
and that's what you can use that against armor.
Yes. So these are the MQ-1C Gray Eagle unmanned aircraft system is it's one of these like loiter and drop. It's not quite a Predator drone, but it can be modified. It is
it's a U.S. system.
Yeah, it's a U.S. system. MQ-10. I'm doubting that. I think we are buying Bayraktars from Turkey and giving them to them, rather than have any of our gear accidentally fly into Russia and have let them peel back the metal on it and say
just today we already saw a governor of a neighboring Russian province saying that the Ukrainians attacked them. I don't know if I believe that or not, but I know that there will be a point at some point where the Russians will claim that the Ukrainians did that, because they know how that'll play internationally. So whether or not the Ukrainians do it, there will be claims coming out of Russia that they did. So just be aware of that.
What else do we have, Johnny?
We've got, will Severodonetsk be another Mariupol, where lots of Russians get bogged down there while the Ukraine takes back Kherson? Or yeah, Kherson.
I mean, potentially, yes.
They're not going to stay, though.
Severodonetsk is a lot different than Mariupol because Severodonetsk is a means to an end. It's not a strategic strong point that they want to hold. They have to have Mariupol because that's along the coastline and that's essential to them. Severodonetsk is strategically important right now because of it being the salient. It's the bulge, and so if they can control that, they can cut off a lot of Ukrainian soldiers. And there's an open discussion being had in Ukraine about whether or not it would be smarter to pull back to the other side of the Donetsk River, and not risk having those guys get surrounded. So
there's a
I don't see a scenario. I don't see a scenario where they're bogged down like Mariupol.
Right. There's also a huge difference in terms of as far as the positioning of Mariupol. While it's on the water, Ukraine does not have a navy, so it's not like they're going to come back and hit it by the water and help salvage it that way. And it's 68 kilometers from the front line in the east. You would have to go through 68 kilometers of fighting to get to Mariupol if you were Ukrainians pushing through Russians to get there. Severodonetsk is blocks away, a few miles. And even when they seized a lot of it, they were still in a valley where the Ukrainians controlled the ridge line so that they could see everybody. They could watch without drones. They could see troops coming into the city and where they were going. Yeah. That's totally different than the circumstance with Mariupol, where effectively the Russians had already encircled it from the land side and controlled the water because the Ukrainians don't have it. The Severodonetsk and Lyman,
and that's another,
yeah.
Right, and that's another reason why they're so anxious and so many calls are coming from the Ukrainians for longer range artillery, because they can see it, but they can't always hit it, because sometimes that stuff is literally out of range. So
that brings us to,
and also they have drones targeting stuff and they can't hit it. So they really want longer range stuff.
Well, they just got it, because according to and this is yeah, right. We just sent them 4 HIMARS systems and ammunition, 5 counter artillery radars, 2 air surveillance radars, 1,000 javelins, 50 command launch units, 6,000 anti-armor weapons, 15,000 rounds of 155 artillery, which is for the howitzers again. 4
109s.
Four Mi-17 helicopters, 15 tactical vehicles, and spare parts and equipment, which is in many ways might surprise people. Almost as crucial as anything else, if not more so. One of the biggest problems the Russians have is they can't repair anything and they can't build any new stuff. They literally can't, because of our sanctions on Western technology. Their entire nuclear launch and targeting system is based on Western technology, on chips made in Belgium, in the United States, in Taiwan, and none of those countries are sharing that stuff right now. They're not going to, and that stuff has to be replenished and updated.
Right, but then on the Ukrainian side of things, and I saw a NATO briefing recently. It was open source, so it wasn't any secret squirrel stuff. I saw a NATO briefing where they said, "Look, apparently the Ukrainians are rushing to get this stuff to the front so quickly that they're leaving certain the higher precision." Artillery, there's an add-on unit that you can put onto the M109s that would allow you to control a round you can control it right to the point of impact.
Right.
But it has to be mounted on the gun. It has to be mounted on the 109.
Takes time.
And apparently they want to get this stuff out in the field so quickly that in certain instances they're foregoing that. So look, I still think the momentum is on the Ukrainian side, but there's going to be an ebb and flow with this war, and both sides are. I mean, the Russians more so. The Russians are getting to, I think, a real crisis point, an inflection point for them. But the Ukrainians, make no doubt about it, they are tired. They are
Yeah.
they're getting pounded constantly. Even Zelensky himself is saying 60, 100 soldiers are being lost KIA each day. So
that's awful.
Look, the Ukrainians are not supermen. They're not. It's not, and it's not like they can do no wrong.
Right.
War is tricky. So I'm not going to just stand there and be, that the Ukrainians are doing everything great and they're perfect, but they're sure as heck doing a lot better than the Russians are, and I don't think that's just because their morale is up and because this is an existential fight. I think they're just better fighters in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, I would also say that all wars have these situations. I mean, go watch movies like Dunkirk and the like. You'll see that even the Allies, with every possible resource, the reality of war is horrifying. And it's and especially when you are committed to it for the safety of your loved ones and the people at home, when you really care, it can be even more frightening and exhausting because your entire life is on the line. Like Chechen mercenaries and guys from the Wagner group and that kind of stuff, a lot of them are like smoking cigarettes and hanging out in places and looting stores and the like, because they don't really have a dog in this fight. They'll go where they're supposed to. They'll kill who they're told to kill, but they're not going to do any more than that. So a lot of them are bugging out after they do some things, and it's really inconsistent. The problem that, and again, like I said, Russia went from allowing 30-year-olds to 35-year-olds to 40 to 45 to 50-year-olds in 2 weeks' time. In the last month, they've done this. That is not something you do when your fighters are, they're not supermen either, and a lot of them are undertrained conscripts that don't even, and remember in the beginning, a lot of them didn't even know they were going to Russia. They found themselves, into Ukraine. Yeah. They found themselves on Ukrainian territory coming from Belarus. They thought they were on an exercise. All of a sudden, they're in live fire with actual human beings that are related to their wife's best friend. Like, that's nuts.
Yeah, and and also, I mean, I'm going to steal a tweet from Mike McFall. I mean, McFall tweeted out something, I think, either today or late last night, his time, early mine. The Russians can go home. The Ukrainians have nowhere to go, so their backs are up against the wall, and that's a great motivator.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. More people's questions in the chat room as well. Infotainmentwars.com and of course twitch.tv/Hal Sparks. We've got one more segment to go. Biden spoke in his list of, he did an op-ed about what we're sending Ukraine, and he said, we are not encouraging or enabling Ukraine to strike beyond its borders. We do not want to prolong the war just to inflict pain on Russia, which is exactly the opposite of what the Russians said he said. And that should tell you something. We'll be back. Yeah. Let's see. Hold on.
Pathetic.
Yep. It's
absolutely pathetic.
Right. And but the 60 Minutes stuff, like there was this one guy, I'll see if I can find it. Who was just basically saying like this is just practice. Let's see. Russian. He for our attack on NATO, and that this has always been the plan.
Yes,
that dude.
Yeah.
The Radar O'Reilly.
Well, good luck to you.
Yeah, right. The Radar O'Reilly of Russia's 60 Minutes. He's a round-faced dude with glasses. I'll end up finding him. I mean, they've said so much garbage.
Yeah, I read that. I didn't see it. Yeah. Nah, I mean, good. I mean, it's just.
It's
God, the Russians are so messed up. They're so messed up. They have such an inferiority complex, and then they compensate by being more and more bellicose, as if being that way, being more belligerent, that somehow they'll prove themselves to be capable by being as aggressive and belligerent and outspoken as they can be. You can say what you want. The proof is in the pudding.
Hold on one second.
I am
There's
happy,
no
you
way
are
they want to
happy,
start a
let
war
us
with NATO.
be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky. Let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling. Let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning. I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning. I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Yeah, we always have to play that for Philip as a bright moment for him. We're gonna like at some point,
Yeah.
Philip. We have to like get. I'll find a way to get them to perform at your birthday or something. Okay, so the guy that I'm talking about that I was talking about during the break was Russian. I don't know what his name is or whatever. He's a very strange looking fellow. I'll tweet it out to you. But
I'd have to look it up.
He's the guy who says that Germany and Japan, egged on by the U.S., are now getting ready to attack Russia in a hot war, and that Germans and Japanese people are genetically very aggressive cultures. Which, I mean, when you talk about like denazification,
Genetic culture?
Yeah,
It's just
right.
nuts.
It's just goofy.
They're saying all sorts of crazy stuff.
Right.
They're also saying Poland intends to take back Lviv. I mean,
Right.
they live in another century.
Right. And this.
Well, there's no such thing as a genetic culture.
Right. Well, that's. But there is, if you believe that your culture is a natural expression of your genetics as a people, and whether high quality or low quality people have high quality cultures versus low quality cultures, and they do have a lot of gold domes and very fancy architecture post-Soviet. Or pre-Soviet in Russia that they pat themselves on the back for, and that they're trying to blow up, turn into rubble in Ukraine, ironically enough. But this guy, okay, so this is a quote from this guy on the Russian 60-minute show. He said, "Be calm, comrades. Next comes World War III. The nuclear war is coming. Is that a normal approach? Is that the way to work with public opinion? People are getting worried." He's like,
I mean,
it's yammer.
It's yammer. It's a lot of showboating, and they wouldn't be doing it if they weren't. Look, the Russians do this all the time. All right, they know in their heart of hearts that it's BS. It's baloney. But they say it to. I don't know if it's halfway to convince themselves of it, or whether or not they're trying to hide their concern and their anxiety by being increasingly, wild and crazy in what they say. But one way or the other, they know that this is not going well for them. They know very well that this is not going well for them, and they're getting more and more frustrated and anxious about it, and angry. Yeah.
Okay, let's grab.
Look.
Yeah.
Yeah, questions.
Here's a happy ending kind of question that we got from Twitch. Shet Pants with 2 Z's at the end wants to know what Philip misses most about being home.
Oh, I miss my friends more than anything else. I miss, I miss a life that was put on hold to come and do this because I felt obligated to do it. I miss. Those are the things I really miss. I miss my friends, and I miss my life.
There was a
makes perfect sense.
Gary Kasparov wrote this thing: the amount of Ukrainian territory occupied by Russia is equivalent to other European countries. This is what appeasers would gift to Putin, along with the human beings who live there. Basically, the boot of Italy would be given away to Russia, or when the Germans had claimed territory in Poland and stuff of equal size. They're like, well, just let them have it. First of all, as if Russia would really be satisfied with it. Like that, okay, we'll stop there then. You give us what we want and we'll stop there. Well, that didn't happen before either. And it never will, according to them, not according to my opinion or even Phil's opinion about this, or but listen to what the Russians are saying on their own shows, in their own speeches, from Vladimir Putin's mouth himself. There is no stopping. And that's the crazy part.
Well, the thing with the Russian mentality is that, take what you can get, and then and then come back and try and get more, and it's everything is a zero-sum equation, and so there's always going to be the drive for more power, and they do, I believe, at least want to be the dominant power on the continent, on the European continent. That doesn't necessarily mean that they want to march into Paris, but it does mean that they see themselves, they really do see themselves as an exceptional nation. And then we do the same thing in the States, but with this whole countries that have a sense of exceptionalism, they do want to see their way of life be the dominant one on the planet. And the Russians are involved in that just as much as, there are a number of nations I could mention. I look in the mirror, but at the end of the day, make no mistake about it, they have that same mentality of like, we are an exceptional country, the great Slavic Orthodox cultural identity. Everybody should be speaking Russian. It's
well, I would say I will always right. I will always say this, and I will always stand by this, and that the United States doesn't show up on anybody's 23andMe. And when you talk about American dominance, you're talking about a political liberal ideology of freedom, even if it's imperfect, that has nothing to do with what the Han Chinese are trying to do in China currently, with a racial takeover, a homogenizing of that country. They look at Japan with envious eyes that they want to racially homogenize their country. And Russia wants to do the same thing with the Slavic countries.
100%.
And there's
100%.
a huge difference between a racially homogenous country talking about their exceptionalism and a racially diverse country with all of its flaws talking about a liberal world order where everybody plays by the rules. It is hugely different.
Make no mistake about it. If Russia were to dominate, the continent, or as they aspire, the globe, if they were the dominant power on the planet, their power is vertical. Always power is vertical. In Russia's perception of how to use power and what power is, it is always vertical. It always goes to the top dog. And so, you're either hammer or anvil, and nothing in between. So that's the kind of mentality of the world that they want. And ultimately, it would be not only just Russians, but it would be Muscovites. It goes that way. I mean, this applies to Ekaterinburg and Vladivostok as much as it does to Kiev or to Paris or London or New York. Everything goes one direction.
Right.
It's not a system you want to live under. Trust me.
It's a mob structure, and it always will be. And there are people who are made, and there are people who aren't. And the Russian Duma crowd is split between the haves and have-nots just as much as the people of Russia are. We got time for one more question, I think, probably. So let's
I'm really
see what
curious about this. Peter Imbrat wants to know about the Ukraine military bikes. I do too.
Oh, the electric bikes?
Military bikes? They're using electric bikes. They're using EV bikes to sneak up on the enemy because you don't hear them. Unlike conventional motorcycles, which maybe you could hear right now.
My cat drives one of those.
They're using EV bikes. They're fighting a 21st century war. Russia's still stuck in the 19th century thinking they're playing Risk. By the way, I've seen a lot of people. I will not talk about Malcolm Nance in any great detail because Malcolm is fighting a war. I am in contact with him. He is fine.
Yeah. There's, that's, and by the way, on the very same show, the 60 Minutes show, one of the people on that show said, our goal is to denazify, Ukraine, which means to be destroyed. That's literally that. There is no there are no half measures in this either. And Putin himself has already said Ukraine is at its end. It's a lie that they've been sold, that any Russians who are there are real Russians and should be, unless they fight against us or turn against us, should be salvaged as best we can and re-educated, I guess, Chinese education camp style.
Well, they can't conceive of a Slavic nation that would actually have a divergence of power structure.
Yeah.
It's anathema to them. And that's why the Ukrainians are fighting as hard as they are, because average Ukrainians can live a decent life. It's not zero sum. And in Russia, you are either amongst the very large population of repressed, or you're in the elite. There's nothing in between, and it's not like that here.
Right. We're at the end of the show. Thanks so much, Philip Ittner, for joining us. Follow Philip.
Thanks, everybody, for watching, listening.
Yeah, at Philip Ittner, 1 L and 2 T's in Ittner, and follow him on Twitter. And, of course, that'll give you links to his vlog from Ukraine as well.
My YouTube vlog on how Ukrainian children are suffering. Go check it out.
Yeah. I will share it as well. Thank you, Johnny Million. Follow at Johnny Million on Twitter. At Johnny Million, at Johnny Million. He got it.
Million. No numbers, no nothing.
No, nothing. He got his whole name. It's amazing. All right. And I will see you guys next, everybody on the live stream on Monday. And I'll see everybody on the radio next Saturday. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Slava Ukraine.
Good on Slava.
And thanks, Chicago.
Thank you. See you next week.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
There we go. Did we have a couple of more questions real quick, Johnny? So we,
sure.
Let's get a couple in a post show since we can, if that's all right.
And Colleen Martin asked, she says she doesn't feel like enough people from West Ukraine are going to where the fighting is to help with the people and the weapons. Are they helping?
Yeah, I've heard that too. If you go to Western Ukraine, you will not see a lot of men of fighting age.
Mm-hmm.
There are some, but overwhelmingly it's women and children and senior citizens. Many of the men have definitely signed up and are not there. Look, the west of Ukraine is tricky, because don't think that they're getting away from this war unscathed.
Right.
They have their internally displaced people situation. They are constantly under air raid sirens, and the threat is always there. But also, in addition to this, and I know it is not nearly as bad as having your town decimated by artillery, but there's a lot of guilt. I told you the story last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, of my friend, my Ukrainian friend, whose brother was out of the country when the war started,
right?
And he's in Poland now. And I was privy to their phone conversation, and his brother was openly weeping because he had survivor's guilt. It's not the same as being in a war zone and being shelled and all the horrors that are going on in the East. But don't think that there is nobody in this. There is not one single person in this country that is going unscathed.
Right.
No.
Yep.
No.
Excellent.
The mental strain on people is exceptional.
Right. What were you saying, Johnny?
Has Phil seen any of Peter Zihan's comments on the Ukraine?
Oh,
no.
Peter Zihan. Peter Zihan is the guy he talks about the demographics of Russia and China specifically. He's of all the folks, quite frankly, that I've seen talk about the demographics, he's the most you know how I am with there is no Hunter Biden laptop. He's that way with China and Russia being not existing in a couple of years.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if Putin drops dead tomorrow, he's going to leave a power vacuum, and there's nobody to replace him because he can't dare to appoint an heir apparent, because that'll put him in a compromised position. So even if he does survive whatever disease he's got, that problem is still going to be there, and it's a biggie. And so Russia post Putin is going to be, I mean, 22 republics make up the Russian Federation.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. But I wasn't aware. Send me a link to him. I have been watching Operator Starsky a little bit more, and I tried reaching out to him because he's here in Kiev apparently. I'd love to do a collaboration with him. So I'm gonna openly and without any embarrassment or chagrin call on the Sparklers. To
try and
send that message out because I'd love to sit down with a number of people. Terrell is coming back soon, and he's going to be out in the West. He's going to be out in the Carpathians, taking Ukrainian language lessons. I get the sense that he's kind of had it with the Bang Bang, But I'd like to talk to people who have a real good understanding of what's happening here.
Right.
And I think those of us who have studied it for as long as I have and others have, we should collaborate as much as we possibly can. So, Operator Starsky, if he's out there and folks can get a message to him, I'd love to collab.
Okay, great. I think that's a strong possibility. I'll do what I'll reach out to as best I can. I don't know him, but I'll see what I can do. Zion stuff is.
Did you see? I did do an interview with Dr. Erwin Redlener.
Yes.
That's in my latest vlog, and that's partly because I was on Steph's show with him. The
There
one
you
time
go.
I was on Steph's show.
Right. This is my feeling is that a lot of what we're experiencing in the world is a natural change that was held back by civil society for a very long time. And then once you start pulling the thread, a lot of it starts to go. And when it comes to stuff like Russian and Chinese hegemony in the world, that it takes a while for people to be able to fit that into their skull and go, is that, because we are taught over here that America is the single hegemonic force in the world and that everything we do is bad and interrupts the natural order of things, like we're damming a river everywhere we go.
And we're the only ones that do it.
Right. Yes. That's the story all the time. And the reality is that it's a lot of even the more questionable stuff we've done, quite frankly, even when misguided, has been done with some people who I politically don't agree with, and strategically certainly don't, but tried to do what they were doing because they viewed the Russian and Chinese threat as the threat that we're seeing it to be right now. They just used whatever tools were in their toolbox or the ideas they have, the only way they know how to handle it.
As long as you open up that can of worms, and I don't want to keep either you or Johnny much longer, but as long as you opened up that can of worms. So the other thing that bothers me about folks back in the States who don't travel an awful lot, who don't go out of the U.S., is that you're upset about some of the things America does or the way things are structured in the States because you were born in a country where you can expect better.
Yeah.
In places like Russia or China, they do not expect better.
Precisely.
So they do not get upset when they don't get it.
Right.
The fact that you get upset because America does things that you don't like on the global stage or does stuff internally is because you expect better.
Mm-hmm.
That is the exception, not the rule, in a lot of places in the globe,
especially the more powerful places.
Yeah,
like Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran. Pakistan currently.
Well, I saw it in the Ummah, the Islamic Ummah. Saw it there. I see it all the time out of Russia. The idea that you can expect something better than just raw power, and that you can that we should operate in a way other than might makes right is not the norm.
No, it never has been.
When I see people getting upset about it, I'm like, well, you're upset about it because you expect better. Because you were born in a country that teaches you can be better.
Right. Yeah, most aren't. Yeah, exactly. Well, Philip, I'll let you go too, or whatever. It's the sun has gone down. It's starting to get really beautiful behind you, so you're probably going to go.
Pretty.
Yeah, it is.
But it's pretty. If you want to do something during the week, I'm going to be in Lviv.
Okay.
But if you want to do something during the week, just drop me a line.
That'd be lovely. I appreciate that. I think you're going to be. Are you going to be on Stuttering John's show? Are you going to be on Stuttering John's show later?
I am going to be on John's show. Yeah.
Okay, I'll be on for a little bit. Yeah.
About 50 minutes.
I'll be on after you or behind you or something.
About an
Yeah.
hour.
So, so have fun, and I will talk to you later. And Johnny, you're wonderful, and congratulations on getting your name. And
Take
everybody,
care, everybody.
yeah, and everybody in the chat room, we will see you quite soon on the regular show. Okay, we already lost Johnny. All right, there you go. Everybody bails so quickly. It's fun. All right, bye, everybody. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. Okay, bye. There you go. So, thanks everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and if you like the show that I put on a regular basis. One of the easiest ways to support the show is simply subscribe on YouTube. You can hit the notification bell if you want to. I'm not a stickler about that because I'm on pretty regularly and it's all long form, so you can find me. But if you want to do that, that's a great thing too. On Twitch, if you want to subscribe, twitch.tv/HalSparks. If you have Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you a dime. If you're already a subscriber, you can gift subs as a way to support the show. And that's all I'm doing today. I'm not selling anything else. I'm just going to be glad we had a great show. And technologically speaking, as much as I had to rewire my studio before I came on today, oh boy, it still came across pretty well. And we had subscribing. Look at me. I'm already stuck in subscribe mode. Surprisingly few technical issues with it. So love it when Phil comes on too. I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much. And hold on. Do I have to? Where's my thing? Here it is. And I will see you guys on the other side. Pretty soon, I'm going to start doing short form videos added to my regular workload. We'll work it out. It's going to be a party. Anyways, but until next time, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else, and I'll see you soon.